Welcome, everybody. I really would like to thank everybody who did such a great job already for this conference. And this is not very professional of me to mention this, but one of the most astonishing things about this event is that its organizer just had a baby hours ago. So we can think of hours in a Heideggerian way. I'm stretching it a little bit, but it's really remarkable that he hasn't missed anything and has made us extremely welcome. And it's a boy. And so I would like to dedicate this panel to Alfred. So I will introduce each of our speakers separately in case people come in late, and so you all will know who you are hearing, and it's a very, very wonderful and august group of speakers who have worked, as Roger was saying, not simply on complex economic matters, but these are true philosophers from what I can see from their writings. So we will begin with Antonia Grunenberg, who is the director of the Hannah Arendt Center at the University of Oldenburg. She's the author of many books, including Der Schlaf der Freiheit, which is an exploration of the philosophical origins and dangers of globalization. She is one of the people who has her own entry in Wikipedia. And I thought Wikipedia had a real nerve because at the end of the little essay it says, Grunenberg gilt als politisch liberal. So the fact that they've outed you as a political liberal, I think you're very gracious to not have written to them and say, mind your own business. In any case, you would have liked that. Well, it's not too late. You can edit. More of Professor Grunenberg's work. She's written Hannah Arendt, Martin Heidegger und Karl Jaspers Denken im Schatten des Traditionsbruch in a collection. She also has written for the prestigious Meisterdenker series on Hannah Arendt. She's written the Hannah Arendt book for them. And Die Lust an der Schuld von der Macht der Vergangenheit über die Gegenwart. She will translate all this for you in her own words. But it's a great pleasure to welcome Professor Grunenberg today. Thank you.
So thank you very much, Marina, for kindly introducing me. Please don't care about my strange voice. I do my very best. So thank you very much for inviting me to this conference. Thank you, Roger. Thanks to all of them who made it possible to come here. Well, referring to the title of this conference, The Burden of Our Time, that was the title of the first English edition of Arendt's famous book, which came out in England in 1958. This title, The Burden of Our Time, sounds indeed like a metaphor. Financial crises like the present one are definitely a burden of our time. It's challenging for us to judge it. Most of us are no specialists in financial affairs, but still we have to judge. Most of us still we have to judge because as citizens of whichever country, we want to know what happened and which consequences it may have for our trust in politics, for the strength or the weaknesses of our institutions, and for the soundness of our politicians. As a participant of this first panel, I'm asked to reflect upon the question, I quote, if Arendt's discussion of imperialism helps us to understand the current financial crisis, quote end. As some of you, well, I mean, if one could ask Arendt what would you mean, I am pretty sure she would say, mind your own business and start thinking. So, but nevertheless, as some of you know, Hannah Arendt has written some quite remarkable articles on the methodological question of whether analogies can help to understand what happens or what has happened. She basically denied this assumption, arguing that trying to understand what is happening or what happened means you have first to look upon its proper inner structure and its historical form before comparing or analogizing it to other events. Arendt frankly put into question that we can understand the events of today with the epistemological instruments of the past. She insisted that we would have to take a close look at the very core of the events of in the present and the past as well, in order to draw new categories from the event which can help to understand it. One basic analytical conclusion of her book on the origins of totalitarianism was that this was a structurally new form of domination which did not have any precedence in the past. She therefore was opposing the argument that one should qualify totalitarianism as a form of dictatorship or of tyranny. So hers was to conclude one has first to check upon what is new and what's unprecedented in totalitarianism, and then getting appropriate analytical instruments from it in order to understand it. And that she did, revealing that at the origins of this new form of domination, there was a foregoing inner erosion of the European democratic nation states and their proper body politics. Part of that process of self-destruction, which started in the middle of the 19th century, was a new modern type of Jew hatred. Both these elements evoked the traditional European elites to make alliances with the mob within their societies, aiming at destructing the democratic political structures. That is, in a very sketchy way, Arendt's answer, I am doing it in a very sketchy way, Arendt's answer to the question of what the origins of totalitarianism were. What the new political nature of totalitarianism was, Arendt argued that the new rulers established a regime which was based upon an interrelation between ideology and terror, which was never experienced before in that way. So what she basically tried to lay out in her book was the specificity of the multi-layered origins as well as the unprecedented form of rule in itself. Following this line of arguments, I want to forward a couple of remarks which refer to the title of this panel. Notwithstanding Arendt's sharp criticism of false analogies, it is very tempting to read her research on the phenomenon of imperialism in the light of the current financial and political crisis. As a reader of today who is kind of sucked in by the suggestive force of her writing, I found myself bursting out in comments like this: "That's it," or my, she really hits the point," and other sophisticated remarks of that sort. Let me therefore look upon what attracted my attention so much that I started talking loudly to myself. I have listed up a couple of thoughts which struck me as being of importance today, and I made questions out of it. Page 124. imperialist bourgeoisie destroys the nation state. If we transfer this analysis to today, could we not say that global financial actors destroy the national body politics? Second, I quote, page 125, expansion as a permanent and supreme aim of politics is the central idea of imperialism, quote end. Isn't it true that for us globalization and the deregulated streams of real and symbolic money is an aim in itself, is self-evident? Third, all our political instruments, she says, including the nation states, erode from its core because it cannot be stretched indefinitely. Roger mentioned it before. Democracy has to have a location, a place, and it has to have borders in a certain sense. She goes on, imperialism as a movement of expansion at expansion's sake. She talks about the grandeur of imperialism that lies in the nations losing the battle, against imperialism. Couldn't you translate that into the reality of nowadays, saying that the grandeur of financial capitalism lies in the weakness of the national democratic institutions? Further on, I quote, page 132, the tragedy of this half-hearted opposition against imperialism was not that many national representatives could be bought by the new imperialist businessmen. Worse than corruption was the fact that the incorruptible were convinced that imperialism was the only way to conduct world politics. Aren't our representatives convinced that there is no way out of that system of financial capitalism? Coming to politics, she talks about the aimless accumulation of power. Power as the essence of political action. Power, it's all quotation. Power as the only content of politics. And on the flip side, there is the lack of interest in public affairs. And last, and even the insistence of the imperialist groups on the self-evidence of their politics seems to be the same like today. Aren't the power groups of today copying even the founding fathers, saying, we hold these truths to be evident, self-evident? So it is very tempting to follow Hannah Arendt in transferring her analysis of imperialism to the reality of postmodern financial capitalism, and yet today is not yesterday. My second remark, those who have to judge about the political meaning of the financial crisis can find in Arendt's thinking a lot of good ideas. But thinking of today, and that is my second remark, one is confronted with the question, what is unprecedented in the stream of events? What is new compared to the economic, financial, and political situation, let's say, to the time Arendt talks about, which is from 1888 to 1914? And how does it affect our political structures? What does not fit into that image Arendt draws about the political impact of the imperialist era? So where are the differences? And I wanted to point out a couple of points, about 5 points. First, there is no political role, not even a false one, of the bourgeoisie anymore. That was Arendt's starting point in her reflection on imperialism. Today, we have to say the different social groups like financial group, capitalist group, political class are intermingled in a way that builds them into new power groups. Let's say the oil group, the bank groups, the military group. Not to forget the big financial centers and their CEOs who are deciding over the future of states. But we have to say that this is politics, what these guys do, how they act, because it deeply affects our political system, our political interests. So it's not just anyhow power. Second, there is no class struggle anymore because there are no more classes who can clearly be identified as classes. All social layers and groups seem to be intertwined economically, financially, not to talk about the political. Whenever a bank crashes, the intelligent worker can talk to himself saying, okay then, in 5 or 3 or 7 months, I'm going to be jobless. Whenever a Lehman Brothers fails, the teacher in the college XYZ may know that his school is going to be in trouble. This system has really come close to us. Everybody is dependent in his or her way. The states, politics, the legal system, the financial groups, social groups, families, individuals, churches. It is an overarching order without any alternative. So we try to make the best of it. This is something new, I guess, that the majority of people believe that there is no alternative at all. And I'm not talking about some socialism. I'm talking about real alternatives. Third, it is not just the nation state that loses the battle against monetary powers. With that, Arendt meant that the political body is losing its capability or its capacity to judge what is the common good and how to control counteracting interest groups. We do still have all instruments of which the political body consists, division of the 3 powers, strong legislative body, political class, so to say. But the political body has been converted, or seems to be converted, into an appendix of the new powerful groups who are forwarding their representatives to be member of the political body, or at least act as lobby groups and follow their interests in the various sections of the political body. We are less able to use the various parts of the political body to control the overarching powers. So this is now totally new, but it is at the core of our reality. Still, we still have all the forms and institutions, but they may work also against the citizens, without even intending that. Paradoxically enough, and this is new too, the financial groups, like all these seemingly independent, ruthless power groups, do need the body politic for their business. They have to count on the protecting forces of the state against all the threatening forces. Al-Qaeda in the Middle East, pirates in Somalia, populist leaders in South America, and so on. They want to be backed by an international legal system which allows them to act in their interest and which has to be instituted by national governments. In Arendt's analysis, the great danger which sprang out of the downfall of the European nation state was that any form of political organization and self-organization melted away, and that instead anonymous masses were crying for a new leader. It is true, in our times, people are not organized around political interests and demands anyway, at least not in great masses. They do not even cry for a new leader. And if they do, it is because they want to get a little hold of the progress, to get their little individual part out of it. Besides it seems to be of no interest, and there is no pride into the body politic, which was as it was invented once upon a time. At the same time, the old new disdain for politics comes up again. Many people are not even convinced that we should regain independent political power to the body politic, because for them it makes no sense anyway. We seem to be condemned to follow the new direction in all traps which the dynamics of the world economy provide. My last point, what is new compared to Arendt's view, is that the legal system on which the body politic bases has been kind of uprooted. New seems for me to be that the process of progress is going to be self-evident, never been put in question. It has not to be put under control anymore. The legal system may work as if world business was under control, but the legal system itself is on its way to change. The legal system is going to be adapted to the new streams of progress and not vice versa. At least this is going to be said by some quite renowned scholars in legal theory. Coming to an end, my last remark refers to the question, what has to be done by political scientists and political theorists? I think we first have to look upon the phenomenon with sharp eyes and a sharp mind. And I propose to focus on the following points. First, analysis of the power structure. Who is it who has power? Where is power originated? Who are the powerful groups? What strengthens their power, and by what it's weakened? Second, analysis of the structural changes the body politic is undergoing as a consequence of a liberal, laissez-faire financial politics. Third, rethinking of the role and structure of representation. Which group represents whom? And is the present system of representation, is it good for our new times? Do we have to rethink it? Do we have to renew it? Fourth, the paradoxic role of the state. I think it should be really the object of research, weakened by the globalization of economic and financial processes, and at the same time strengthened by the need of legal services by global players, challenged by the need of welfare. And last, the legal system, I mentioned it again. Legal system in between being transferred to a totally different framework, no more adapted to nation states only, but to much bigger spaces. How about a research on these new categories like space instead of nation state, international space or global space? What does that mean? Does it refer to political spaces, and can space be transferred into political realms? Is it the same? These are questions over questions. And above all, we cannot work anymore with only the traditional analytical instruments. We have to take a real close look of what is going on and not only relying upon our traditional ways of looking upon things. Thank you very much.